As the title of this video suggests, I recently watched all of the movie adaptations of the Green Knight story. I figured, what the hell, why don't I make a video where I just talk about each one? So join me on this journey where we look at all of the different adaptations of the Green Knight story, going from 1973 all the way to 2021. The first part of this video is going to be covering all the films that were created by a guy named Stephen Weeks, and the second part of this video will be covering all the films not created by Stephen Weeks. So let's get started. In 1973, a movie was released called Gawain and the Green Knight, which was written and directed by Stephen Weeks. Then, a reboot of that film was released in 1984 called Sword of the Valiant, and that was also written and directed by Stephen Weeks. I'm going to be talking about both of these films at the same time because their stories are practically identical. Even the dialogue and some of the shots in each film are exactly the same, to the point where the 1984 film makes the 1973 film obsolete. In other words, anything that I can say about one Stephen Weeks film can also be said about the other Stephen Weeks film. Anyway, out of all of the adaptations that I will be talking about in this video, the Stephen Weeks adaptations deviate from the source material the most. The only thing these films keep from the source material is that Gawain and the Green Knight meet each other at the beginning and the end of the story, and that's it. The remaining 95% of both of the Stephen Weeks films consist of a clusterfuck of different Arthurian legends all mashed together. An example of this is a location that's inserted into the story called Lyonesse. Those of you who are familiar with Arthurian legends may recognize that name from the story of Tristan and Isolde. However, it's not any parts of the actual story that is adapted from Tristan and Isolde that Stephen Weeks put into his films. The only thing he included was just the name of this location. The events surrounding Lyonesse in the Stephen Weeks films more closely resemble another Arthurian legend called Yvain the Knight of the Lion. Each film borrows characters such as the Black Knight and a woman named Lunette from this tale. And these were just the examples that I could find while doing research for this video. The truth is, each film is filled with seemingly random locations and characters that serve no purpose to the plot that could have been adapted from anywhere. It's not that I don't have the time to look into every little thing in the Stephen Weeks films. I just don't care. In fact, I'm not going to talk about these films anymore. But before we move on to the next thing, I would like to say one fun fact about each film. First, the guy who played the Green Knight in the 1973 version, his last name, get this, is Green. His name is Nigel Green. They got a guy named Green to play the Green Knight. In the 1984 version of this story, the Green Knight is played by none other than Sean Connery.
I came to challenge a man, not a beardless boy. I give you a year's grace to grow your beard. 12 sweet, short months of life to do with as you will.
That's pretty cool, right? Sure it is. But let's move on to the other movies.
No one. I see no noble knights, but boys without beards.
In 1991, a TV movie aired called Gawain and the Green Knight, which was directed by John Michael Phillips and written by David Rudkin. Out of all of the feature-length adaptations of the Green Knight story, this one is the closest to the source material. In fact, as far as I can tell, everything that happens in the source material happens in this film. It goes to show that you don't have to add a whole bunch of nonsense in order to make a live-action adaptation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. However, sticking to the source material isn't going to get you a very long film. This 1991 adaptation is only an hour and 15 minutes. Now don't get me wrong, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I actually like this adaptation, and I think that there's a lot that's done well in this film. But if a filmmaker wants to have a longer runtime while adapting the Green Knight story, it will require adding some content outside of the source material. Which brings us to the 2021 adaptation of the Green Knight, which is 2 hours and 10 minutes long, almost an hour longer than the 1991 version. But before we dive into the 2021 film, I'd first like to make a special mention of a short animated film.
Ah, Sir Gawain, I am grateful. Promise you will approach me alone in a year and a day for me to present my blood.
In 2002, there was a short animated film called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is about 25 minutes long. Like the 1991 TV film, this animated film is accurate to the source material. If you're looking for a quick way to brush up on the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight for your English literature class, then I highly recommend this movie. With that out of the way, let's finally talk about the 2021 version, The Green Knight.
One year hence.
The 2021 adaptation of The Green Knight is directed by David Lowery, and so far critics seem to love it, while audiences seem to be split on it. This comes to me as no surprise, seeing as how this film is far more experimental when compared to other fantasy-type films. As you've probably already put together, the 2021 adaptation of The Green Knight has to deviate a little bit in order to achieve its 2 hour and 10 minute runtime. There's a lot of scenes and little details throughout the film that weren't adapted from a bunch of other Arthurian tales like in the Stephen Weeks films, but rather were created solely for the purposes of this film. There is one exception to this, though, and it's that the film does have some scenes that are inspired by the story of Saint Winifred. But that's it. Overall, the added content and the changes to the source material, whether they be good or bad, at the very least feels like it belongs in the world of the Green Knight. At no point while I was watching the film did I feel like it was detracting from the main story too much. And that's honestly a problem that I had with the Stephen Weeks films. However, due to its experimental nature, I can see why people don't like this new adaptation. This is a film that, at times, can leave you with more questions than answers. And sometimes it asks the audience member to fill in some of the blanks. I am not saying that the film is poor for doing this, and I'm also not saying that people should blindly like this film either. If the 2021 film sounds too experimental for your tastes, then I would highly recommend watching the 1991 TV adaptation. However, if you don't mind artsy experimental films, then you'll probably like this movie. All in all, the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is a fascinating one. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.